Big Dan, Daniel Manasoiu, meeting Victor Hugo. And now with this one taking place in the absolute division, regulation is 10 minutes. Should we get to overtime, that will be 5 minutes. When we talk about the youth of Big Dan, Daniel Manasoiu, Gordon, when you're this young and you're improving and doing jiu-jitsu as much as he has, I got to think that not only is he different from the first time you met Hugo, but you might not even be able to gauge how much different because he's growing in so many ways that a young jiu-jitsu practitioner doesn't necessarily do later in their career.
Yeah, of course, especially training with John. Like, training with John is like the closest thing, like the closest way I can like relate. The closest thing I can relate it to is like the hyperbaric time chamber in Dragon Ball Z, where you like go in for a day and it's like actually a year. Like the progression under him is just like so insane. And you know, Dan is a young guy and he's just absorbing information, you know, day by day. And you know, they had a very, very tightly contested match in ADCC where Dan got close to a few guard passes and like the last 5 seconds ended up getting his back taken and got scored on in regulation. So the last match was super close, razor thin, nail biter. It was very interesting to see how they both have, you know, changed their strategy, you know, for this slightly different rule set.
Trying to go for that takedown is Hugo.
He tried to shoot that. He tried to shoot that arm drag single. He's got an extension on Dan's arm.
Nice try by Hugo. Nice escape by Dan.
These two men are physical specimen. I mean, the size they have and the way they move is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, George. I mean, both big men, but both big athletes as well.
Oh yeah, and they move like lightweight. I mean, it's unbelievable.
They're both huge, and they both they have a trait which a lot of heavyweights don't have, is they both have the ability to play bottom position and invert. They're flexible. They can both play top and bottom just as good. So they're definitely exceptional as heavyweights.
And chatting with Big Dan, he said, you know, yeah, I'm a big guy to say the least, but he says sometimes that you know, his stature sort of is the narrative when really we should be focusing on his technique because he doesn't have to rely necessarily on big man tactics. He can do it all in jiu-jitsu.
Action blue, action blue.
Yeah, of course. I mean, most of his matches he actually pulls guard, and now he's just starting to branch out into standing position a little more and playing top. But he's known as a guard player, which, you know, for someone his size isn't really common.
Yeah, B-Mac, we saw him on the FPI stage previously, and he got that smother choke.
Smother choke, that's the Big Dan special. But he also had a great submission against Fyodor. Oh, he's got a stretch on the arm here. Hugo's made that play towards the arm lock twice.
And both of them have been pretty good attempts, but Dan manages to move out and away. And I can't tell, I don't think he has his hands locked here. But he's got Hugo's knees crushed together pretty good. If he can lock his hands here, Hugo can be in some trouble.
Yeah, Hugo keeping his hip on the ground, trying to stop Big Dan from reaching underneath and locking the grip.
And nice recovery. Hugo didn't take his hips off the ground, which was smart because then Dan would have locked his hands if Hugo tried to shrimp away. So he brought his feet back into the hips instead. Good play by Hugo.
Action on top.
You know, looking at Daniel, a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. The belt rank seems to be ambiguous at best, especially when you're a purple belt under John Danaher.
The belt is there to tie up your gi.
Right.
Center, work center.
And we're all out of gis.
And also, you have athletes that sometimes have a background in wrestling and judo, sambo, so you know they might be let's say a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but they have a background in another combat sport that gives them a lot more techniques and knowledge.
Hands on the hook. Here. Goes out. Here we go, guys. Ready? Fight!
Dan pressing forward. He's got Hugo on his back foot.
Which is so strange to see because Hugo is usually the bigger one. He's usually the guy pushing everybody around the mat.
4 minutes have elapsed here in regulation.
First warning red, first warning red.
Who is the biggest grappler in the circuit? Who is the heaviest one?
Stop.
Is Dan the heaviest one?
He's not the heaviest. There are other heavyweights who are heavier. But I mean, he's the biggest one who's like in good shape, I would say.
Athletic.
Him and Heike
big.
Jusela are both pretty big. They just recently fought at the ADCC trials, and he was in ADCC last year. They're roughly the same size. But Dan is definitely one of the bigger, more athletic heavyweights.
Dan really the aggressor on the feet right now. He's pressing forward. He's got Hugo stepping backwards pretty consistently.
Warning blue, warning blue.
But he ends up the one who gets the warning off of it.
Approaching the halfway point of regulation.
Nice try.
Stop. Go center up, center up. Center up, face each
Victor
other.
Hugo
just
walking.
stalking.
Yeah.
When Dan was walking here, as Hugo made his walk out, Dan just walking back and forth. I felt like
I know. Nice single
we
by
need a
Dan.
wall between
Nice
us.
job by Dan. Good single.
Beautiful single leg, chest pressure.
Talk about the size of Manasoiu. Big Dan said he's been this big since he was 16 years old.
Warning red, warning red. Second warning.
Now warning
Second warning for red.
thrown the way of Victor Hugo.
I remember Dan used to come to Henzo's, and all the like hobbyist heavyweights thought that he was just an adult at the time. So they would train super hard with him because he was like 6'7", like 245 pounds at the time. And then I'm like, no, he's 16. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's huge.
Again with
try
that same arm lock.
Yeah, Hugo trying to isolate this arm once again.
It's just the way that Dan's leaving his arm behind during the passing.
Yeah.
Hugo's taking that 2-on-1 grip and just trying to isolate.
Oh, he's falling on his back.
I really think he's going to be way more comfortable from this position, though. I mean, he kept the fight on the feet for a long time, ended up getting the takedown. But this is really, and you alluded to this earlier, Gordon, this is really what Big Dan's known for. He's known for his guard.
Yeah. Hugo's passing is good, but if Dan gets into a leg entrance on him, it could be
Lights out.
it could be trouble.
And he's a leg breaker, too. We've seen him
Yes, he
absolutely
is.
shatter some, not just ligaments, but the actual bones of the legs.
We're talking about legs. Now he's going for it right now.
He had an Achilles grip, but he lost the Achilles grip. He should have used the Achilles to climb the leg a little bit.
Uses that scramble off of the leg entry, though, to regain top position.
Yes, yeah, that was smart by Dan. And it's interesting because both the guys are conceding bottom position without issue because there's no points. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes during those exchanges in and overtime.
I never seen a heavyweight of that size being that comfortable on the bottom. I mean, it's a very unique style.
These are probably
Second
the
warning
two
on top.
best
Second and final warning on top.
heavyweight guard players. I mean, well, at least two of the best heavyweight guard players that
Work,
you're
Jamal,
going to
let's
see.
work.
Like
Don't
Gordon
insult
was
me like
talking
that.
about. That's why I said well, I changed it. I was like, I'm not trying to get beat up in the booth, man. But both these guys are comfortable inverting. They've really adopted a lot of the small guy jiu-jitsu and brought it into the heavyweight class. We see the small guys learning to wrestle like the big boys.
Yep.
And we see some of the big boys now starting to learn to play guard like the smaller guys.
Yeah, the heavyweight, just in the last like 5 years, the heavyweight division has, the level of talent has increased dramatically.
Minus one on top. Minus one on top.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about, guys, how about the leg locks? I remember early days of jiu-jitsu when I was.
It was a sin to
Yeah,
do a leg lock.
100%. Now we're seeing it more and more and more. It becomes a thing now. Everybody's good at leg lock. Before it was only a few guys that were specialized in leg lock. Now it's a must. It's a requirement if you want to compete to the elite level.
90 seconds left. Manasoiu down 1. See the point taken away from him.
Yeah, this means that Dan is going to have to score in overtime.
Minus one bottom. Minus one bottom.
Well, never mind. Now they
Psych.
both have a -1, so.
Yeah, both have lost a point now, which just, highlights the fact that action is very important here. And if the athletes are not initiating, they will be penalized.
Dan doing a good job now of keeping the weight on. Earlier in the match, he would pull back and disengage his weight. Hugo looking for that little tripod.
Yeah, in my opinion,
-1 on top. -1 on top.
I was just going to say, in my opinion, I think Dan needs to push the action a little bit more from top position.
Especially now with another negative, so Manasoiu down -2 to -1.
I think this overtime is inevitable at this point, and I think this is going to, Dan's going to really have to dig into this work he's been doing with his stand-up game and his wrestling to be able to win this match. We won't see these big boys conceding the bottom position in the overtime while the points are
-1 on top.
Oh,
wow.
Another
Second
negative.
one. Yep.
Tied.
All right, time expires. We are headed to overtime, and the score stands Manasoiu down -3 to Victor Hugo's -1. What is that going to do here, guys? Gordon, I'll ask you for Dan Manasoiu. How much is that going to factor into his approach here in overtime?
I mean, he's down 2. So, I mean, he's going to really have to make something happen here. The good news is that he did hit a takedown on Hugo, and he was able to put him down. So, you know, if he can do that and he can either force Hugo to accept the bottom position, he can at least tie the score, or Hugo will most likely turtle. If he can chase his back from there, then, you know, he could have some success.
But he's going to have to hit this takedown just to even the score up. You know, then he's got to score on him or submit him.
Exactly.
So he's really behind right here.
But, you know, although he is behind on negatives, he did have most of the offense. So it'll be interesting to see how they score it. He did hit a couple of takedowns, whereas Hugo, I mean, Hugo did sweep him, but Dan kind of just set back. He had a few, you know, a few looks on Hugo's legs, but nothing crazy. So it'll be interesting to see how they score it if the score is tied.
And here we go with overtime. Again, overtime in the absolute division is 5 minutes.
Dan works into the underhook. Overhook over on his left side. See what he chooses to do with that. Hugo framing him out, though, on his left side. Good head position by Victor.
-1 red, -1 red.
Victor Hugo hit with a negative point there.
So Dan now has to pick the pace up, even if he's not really intending on taking him down. He's got to be picking up legs. He's got to be. There we go.
Wow, nicely done.
Nice job by
Scramble
Dan,
here.
and he's going to score off that.
Hold the position. Hold the position right there. Hold the position where we're at. Let me see. Let me see. I got you right here. Okay. Yep.
Tense moments here as Jonathan Romero tries to take into account.
The guys outside the mat should pray that these two men doesn't fall on them.
And Hugo might be hurt, grabbing that right knee.
No, you went off.
Yeah, we hear him scream. Something happened.
Okay. So back down. Rebuild that position where we were.
Hugo able to continue despite suffering a bit of a leg injury.
That
It wasn't locked. No, you weren't not locked.
I don't know for sure. That seemed like a 3 count that he was down, but I'm not 100% positive. And he was in turtle for 3.
Stop!
Running out of real estate.
All right.
Hugo fell. He seems to be okay. Jonathan Romero giving Big Dan a warning. We restart here on the feet.
And Dan needs to push the pace here because Victor needs another negative.
Oh, he chooses to pull guard.
He pulled, and he didn't really pull into an offensive situation. I don't know if they did. I don't know if they're going to give him a negative for that or not.
If they would, it would be tied.
Oh, that's super interesting. It doesn't look like they're giving him the negative.
It
Oh,
doesn't.
they did.
They did.
-1 for the guard pull. -1 for the guard pull.
So
I
now
think
we're-
that's the right
So
call.
I think it's the right call.
By the
I
way
think
they
it's the right call.
established the
Yep,
rules during
yep.
the rules
And
meeting, that
he
was
had
the
a,
right call.
he had a collar tie, and then he kind of just like flopped down. So he didn't really pull himself into an attack. So now the key here is going to be motion from both guys. Like they both need to be offensive because another negative is coming for somebody for sure.
All even at -3 with just about 3 minutes left to go here in overtime.
The problem is that when when Dan was passing before, he was getting negatives, but he wasn't really changing his strategy that much. So he's been playing a little bit on the outside, waiting for opportunities, but he hasn't really been creating opportunities. I think now is the time for Dan to force opportunities and force Hugo to make a mistake and open up. He's really got to push the pace here, and Hugo has to be off-balancing Dan from bottom position if he doesn't want another negative. It's going to come down to passivity, I think, in this last 2 minutes.
If you were sitting in the corner with Dan right now and you wanted to see him change his passing up a little bit, what would you tell him to do?
I would be telling him to start putting flanking Toriando pressure on him. See, like now Victor.
-1 blue, -1
So
blue.
now Victor is going to have him in close guard, and
Let's work.
Dan's got to look to stand up here. If Dan doesn't stand up soon, he's going to get another negative.
Yeah, Manasoiu
He's got to
hit with
stand
that
up.
negative.
He's got to stand up and start flanking from this position. Otherwise, he's gonna run into some trouble.
-4 to -3 with 2 minutes left to go.
Now he should be putting Toriando pressure on him, because if he puts Toriando pressure on him, then
back in the
he's
guard,
all
back
in
in full
offense.
guard.
Now Dan's got to stand up again. Victor's going to try to get him passivity calls. Victor's very tactically good. He's going to try to keep getting Dan passivity calls from closed guard here.
He's locking up the overhook on his right side.
Dan should be immediately popping up to his feet, or else he's going to get another call.
There he goes.
And there he goes. And now he's got to start really looking to pass. Either palm the legs, or Toriando, or get chest to chest and half guard. He's got to do something.
Hugo looks to create a sweep. Big Dan resting on his knees right here.
They're both exhausted, but you know, it's a minute left. They both got to go. I mean, Dan more so because he keeps getting hung up in closed guard, and this is Victor's path to victory here. Dan realized that, so he's standing, but the problem is when he stands, he kind of just sits inside of his legs.
Yeah, he doesn't stand with the next play in mind. Hugo creates the off balance, gets to the body lock. Here he goes, he puts Big Dan on his back.
Wow.
Looking to step around into the mount now.
Huge momentum swing here
He's
for
gonna
Victor
get a-
Hugo
he's gonna
in
get a
top
clean
position.
The Americana.
Back the arm. 40 seconds left. There's a tap. It is done. Victor Hugo submits Big Dan Manasoiu.
Wow.
What a reversal of fortune for Victor Hugo. Shoved off the mat. It looked like he had hurt his leg at one point,
Yeah.
but ultimately comes back and gets a sub.
Wow, what a turn of events. It's unbelievable. What an amazing comeback.
And when he got him with that sweep, he took his heart, stepped over into the mount, got him with that Americana.
Unbelievable. Here it is, getting in top position. George, walk us through the end here.
Wow, I mean, I'm blown away. What a change of event. I mean, the momentum was, it looks like it was not going well for him, and Dan was about to pass, and then he swept him, take control of the body, and go for the mount and Americana. I mean, beautifully executed. Showcase a lot of heart, because I'm sure he's exhausted right now. I mean, he pushed through it, and he did it.
Exhausted and victorious to make it official, Justin Bernard.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee John Romero calls a stop to the match for your winner by submission via Americana, Victor Hugo.
Victor Hugo getting it done via submission over Big Dan, Daniel Manasoiu.